Let's have a quick look at this. The goose, they got real attitude, haven't they, geese? It's really nice. But what are we looking at here? As usual, we're looking at where the light's coming from, and it is coming from the top left. And although it's a white goose, we have got to try and model his head by using shadow. So look where the light's coming down here, it's hitting the top of his head. What I want to make a point, I want to try and get his head looking three-dimensional. And of course, we do that by highlight and shadow. So spot where the highlights are. This works particularly well if you squint your eyes. If you half close your eyes, that kind of eliminates a lot of the detail and you can see where the shadow is much more clearly. So it's all down the back of his neck, but look how you get these little patches of shadow under his jaw, and look at his eye socket. Look at that eye, the shadow around there, a little bit of highlight there, a little bit of shadow there, and all that is telling us the shape of what his head is. And the beak as well. Obviously underneath his beak is much darker, that's in the shade. Little sprinkles of highlights here and there are much lighter. For example, here, that bit is lighter than that bit. And that tells you that it describes the form. It tells you the shape of his beak, which is why we don't just make it a big orange triangle. We want to try and get these differences of value on our paper, because that's going to tell the viewer, our audience, what shape, what three-dimensional shape this head is. So let's have a crack. Let's have a look and see if we can translate this three-dimensional image, this photograph of a three-dimensional image, onto a two-dimensional plane, the two-dimensional plane of the paper. So using our trusty weapons of choice, pencil and paint. So let's start by getting this shape down.
Yeah.
Okay. As usual, let's just start off by doing the basic shape, which is, well, I don't need to tell you. Well, it's just this. Remember, we've got a skull in here, so there is a kind of oval there. Look, that I'm just making loose, scratchy lines. It's a sketch.
Can you mute her, please?
Oh, pleasure. There you go, Gwen. You're gone. Right, peace and quiet. A nice egg-shaped skull inside there. It is there. And we've got a triangular beak on the end there, like that. I mean, I've done him a bit big, but because I want to try and, because he's white, I'm going to block in this background here, because the only way I can make a point of showing that rim light around there is by painting the background black. So I'm going to do that. But let's just get this basic shape in. So look, I'm following that underneath that skull there, that goes around there. But then that bone turns into feathers and goes down there to form his neck. And then now I've got this all kind of loosely sketched in, I can firm up with a little bit more pressure on my pencil, the detail, and I can start to see what's going on down here. Look, you see that comes down there and his head turns into his neck there. So there's a little kink in there like that. And then it comes down there and away. So that's got that in there. That comes down like there. He's got this thing here. I don't know what it is or why it exists, but it's part of a goose. And then I'm just following my eye, my eye is doing most of the work. My eye is looking closely at the old goose. And my pencil's just following my eye. See, this is what's nice about drawing. It links your eye and your eye. So your eye and your hand and your head. if you choose to use it. Your brain links it all together. Now look at this. This is quite interesting. What's going on here? You can see the bottom of his bill going underneath the top of his bill. And if you're clever, you can draw that. Look, you can see the bottom of the bill goes in there, and then his bill, we're looking underneath his top bill. So that comes down here like that. And it's not just a straight line. It describes a clever little art. And you know, if you do a little upturn at the end here, you give him a little smile. Just that little upturn there will change the whole attitude of his demeanor. He will suddenly cheer up if you put a little upturn there. And then of course, we've got teeth in here. If geese have teeth, maybe they're not teeth, I don't know what they are, but there's certainly some kind of serration going on in there. So let's get that in. Okay. He's got a nostril here, which we will just flag up. And that kind of describes the goose. Comes down there. Yeah, I can still modify things a little bit as I go along. And I can see that I've not probably dipped down quite enough there, so I'll come down a little bit more. It's never too late to change. Well, it is sometimes. It is too late to change things, but the earlier you change things, the better. So I'm happy with that. It's a sketch. But look, we've now described the lumps and bumps in his head, and it's got a little bit of character. It's not 100% accurate, but it's a sketch. Now we can also start to try and describe the quality of these lines. You know, that's not just a line. Look, we've got a change of texture here. It goes from beak to feathers. So, and it does so that this beak feather interface is slightly raggy. So let's just kind of maybe say, okay, look, let's just alter the quality of our line a little bit and make it do stuff. We haven't got the eye in yet, which is a pretty major component of this head. So I'm kind of looking and weighing up whereabouts it is. It's not back here. It's not down here. I'm just weighing up where it is in terms of this dip here and in terms of this bill down here. And I reckon just to flesh him out to start off with is about there. Okay, but the eye as well. It's not just a circle. Look, he's got little eyelids. He's got an upper eyelid and a lower eyelid. And yes, it begins as a circle, but it's a bit of an ellipse. And it comes a little bit further forward like that. And there's a yellow or orange border. His eyelids are orange. And his eyes back here. I'm going to put a highlight in because I'm going to leave a little highlight blank. But I'm actually going to draw the physiognomy of this eye. You know, he's got a pupil in the middle like that. So let's just get him in. That just gives you a little bit of a roadmap. Oh, here's Catherine. Catherine's just arrived all the way from Japan. Right. So there, we've pretty much got that guy down. Now, you know, earlier on I was telling you about all these shadows and these highlights and lowlights. I'm just going to suggest some of these so that I know where they're going to be. And I'm just going to put them in. I'm just going to mark in little fields of shadow, some dashes like this. So I know that this nodule on the top of his head's in shade there. So I'm just going to put in a few dashes there just to remind me. What is important is this eye, look, little shadow at the front of his eye, just there, which is kind of important. And then his eye socket sticks out from his head. So there's kind of shadow around here. But what is important, there's a highlight here. And I want to make that, I want to keep that just underneath his eyeball. You can see that that gives real shape to his eye socket there. And that makes it really pop out. So as usual, we're not, because it's watercolor, because we're using the white of the paper as a highlight, we're going to keep everything that we want to be bright, white and untouched. So that's kind of, let's just get a few of that in. Let's look around his mouth. You can see, look, that's his beak comes into there, but you can see there's shadow down here. So again, I'm putting just a few little dashes just to show everybody that this is where it turns away from the light. Because we're going to put this shadow in with, this is going to be painted, but these are just little marks to let me know where I'm going to put my paint, my shadows. And as usual, try and make your marks interesting. So look down here, that you can see here, you see little dashes that describe his feathers. The feathers on his head, I mean, I'm sure they are feathers, but they're tiny little feathers. So they're more like the dots. But down here, as the feathers turn into proper feathers, they get a bit longer, like this. And around the back of his head, which is kind of in the shade down here, it's much, much darker. So, and then he's got a ridge coming down here. So I'm really just suggesting them with these pencil marks, but really we're going to do most of the shading with paint. So I've not done much, but you can start to see that that gives it a little bit of shape. Haven't really focused much on the bill, but again, we're going to do most of this with paint. But let's just firm that bottom line in there like that. This bill itself is really quite interesting. Because look, it's certainly not just a line. It's a line. You can see the difference between his top bill and his bottom bill. And look at that lip. Is it a lip? But you can see that there's a gap here. So this mouth comes around here like this. And it's got a real, there's space in between his top bill and his bottom bill. And it's a space that sticks out in the light here, but then disappears into the shade there. And that tells you describes the shape of this bill. So he's out into the light here, and then it disappears into the shade there. And under here, it's black. But anyway, I'm waffling on. Let's do some painting. Now, he's white, and the bill is orange, and there's blue in here. So I'm tempted to maybe you could probably do this in two colors, blue and orange. So let's make up a nice kind of goose bill orange. Look at that, that's bang on. It's just about exactly right, the right color that is. So here's my bill. And you know what, let's just get this in. Now I'm not painting the highlights, so I'm leaving that white. I'm leaving most of the top of his, bill white. But let's get some color in here. Let's start to build up some of this color. So underneath that's always going to be dark. Down here is dark shadow. And I'm just blocking in. We're working quick. Watercolor always likes to be done quickly. So that's him. That is done. That's that. Now look, it's white down here. but he's also paler on top here. So can you see here? Covering my tissue, washing my brush, drying it off, and I'm pulling out some of that colour there. And already, you see, you make that a little bit brighter, a little bit lighter. And it starts to look three-dimensional already. That you can start to see the shape. Now, where he's darker, I need to add a little bit of shadow. Now I can wait for this to dry and then glaze over it with a darker colour, or I can add the complementary colour to this, which the complementary colour to yellow is a kind of purple. But I'll leave that for the time being. Let's have a look at the shadow here. Now I'm going to go with a nice blue. These are my colours, so I'm going to take this blue here to try and recreate this shadow. But I don't want it to be blue. I don't want it to be a solid blue. I want to make it less blue. So I'm going to mix these two colors together and let's see what happens, because this is going to help me to create this neutral shadow. So if I take a bit of this blue, this is mixing these two together. Now I know that blue and yellow are going to make green. And I don't really want green shadows, but I can neutralize this green. Look, that's gone green. I knew that was going to happen. I can neutralize this green by adding a little bit of red. So if I just take, just a touch of that red and add it to that green, that takes the green out of the green and makes it, well, it neutralizes it. Can you see that? That green slowly disappearing. It's actually going a nice grey, a nice warm grey. I'd like it a little bluer than that, so I'm going to come back in there and put a bit more of my blue in. So now, look at that. That is absolutely perfect for my shadow. So from that yellow, or that orange and the blue, I've made this cool, shadowy blue, which I can use to give a little bit more form to this down here. I can start to say, okay, let's introduce a bit of shadow in here like this, softening the edges with a wet brush if I want to. And coming under here to make this much, much darker under here. Might be a little bit green, but I'll tackle that another time. Oh, let's have a little closer look at this. Let's go inside his mouth there, but leave. It's actually quite, just looking at this now, there is red under here. So I can just come in and maybe take a bit of this red and put a little smear of that in there like that. And of course, putting that red in there neutralizes that green and makes this pill a little bit more realistic. Anyway, let's get down to this shadow. Let's start to put in this shadow area here with this lovely shadowy shadow color that I've got here. It's actually still a bit green, so just a hint of red just to take that green away. Now that's nailed it. Now I can just test it there. Look, perfect, really neutral, just right. So now I'm just revisiting this just to give this a bit more form. Just smoothing the colors out, just making it dance around. Maybe putting a bit more of this under here, fiddling a little bit. I should be more confident and quick with this, but anyway, I fiddled around that so much that I've now run out of shadow. But let's start to put down, let's boldly go and put in some of this shadow down here. There. Now I don't particularly want sharp edges here because these are curves. If it was a sharp edge like that says that's an abrupt change of angle, and it isn't an abrupt change of angle, it's smooth. You know, these are all curves, these are all soft edges. So look how I've softened down that edge just with clean water. And that stops my goose's head having corners. Let's have a look at this. I'm painting where I put those little dashes, remember? Sharp edges, we don't want them. Soften them off like that. I'm running out of my shadow color. I'm gonna have to make some more. Just get this in. These shadows are telling us where all the bumps and hollows and dips and curves are. I don't, you see here, these are my sharp edges here. I don't want them, so I'm washing my brush, drying it off, and just using clean water to soften off and make everything smooth out. Don't want sharp edges on a goose's head. You want lovely soft transitions of value from light to dark. It's got a few in. Let's quickly make some more shadow color. So get my blue. Add some of this lovely yellow. Blue and yellow makes green, which we knew was going to happen, but that doesn't bother us because we know how to turn that green into a grey. We turn the green into grey by adding the complementary colour of green, which is red. And there you go, look, put the red into there and the green disappears and goes grey. There we are again, look, we've got that lovely grey. All right, let's be a bit bolder. I've got a few tentative shadows in here. We can go much, much darker. Look how dark it gets down here. Look how dark it is under his chin. Look how dark it is here, there, and everywhere. So it's a good shadow, but you know what? Let's make it a bit bluer because this is obviously, you can see the blue sky reflecting off his white feathers there. So we could go a little bluer. So a bit more blue in there, I think. There we go. All right, now let's have another look. We've got this lovely ridge down here, remember? That came in down there. Look, that's much better. It's hard edged, so I'll wash my brush, dry it off a bit, and just soften that edge like that. Let's start to get some nice deep shadows in. Comes up here, that goes there. Really got there. Remember, the first thing we did was to draw that oval skull shape. Let's try and retrieve that oval skull shape with these shadows. See that bit there describes the head going underneath there like that. That bit there is that bit there. Let's get nice and dark under here, under his chin. And here there's stuff going on. And this bit here that describes where his mouth joins his head. And that bit there. So I'm putting all these little patches of shadow in, and then I've got to soften them off just so that they don't look too abrupt. Just going to get lines in here, which I don't want. So I'm wetting it all down and making it all flow. Around here, there's a lot going on around here. And there's a nice shadow down there. Got to get his eye in as well, haven't we? That's what's missing. I'm softening it all off because I don't really want hard edges. So plenty of water, and that'll all start to flow together. Let's have a look at this eye. Now, this eye needs to be, let's just put a bit, need to get a bit of stuff down there. Flooding this with water now. That highlight, I'm leaving the front of his neck white. Look, that is very white down there. So that most definitely stays white down there. But I'm actually going in with some blue here. Let's make up a bit more of that blue, because there is blue going on down here. And there's blue going on at the top of his head. You know, like I say, where the sky is reflecting on his white feathers. If I put too much on, I can always lift it off by just drying my brush off and then sucking up paint with what we call the thirsty brush. Anyway, let's make a nice dark mix to do his eye. So look, I'm going straight into my paint here. I'm making a very thick, almost, it's hardly liquid at all, just a very thick pasty blue. Let's add some nice thick pasty red to that. That's going to turn it into a purple or a brown. Let's add a little bit of something dark. So that's brown, which is a brown is a muddy red. So if I add a nice dark green to that, that is going to turn it into a very nice gloopy black. Just a nice, just like that. Let's get that eye in. So I'm not painting the highlight, but I'm putting in an eye which is just solid like that. Now, watch this. I'm just going to take off the bottom half of that paint and make that a bit lighter like that. I don't know if any of you went and visited or did my eye tutorial, which is on YouTube as well. But look, I take out the bottom of that eye, just take out the bottom of the paint. Look how that makes that really realistic, doesn't it? Suddenly you've got a really lovely glassy eye there. Anyway, I digress. Let's get in his kind of nice orange eyelids.
Is that on Skillshare, the eye demo?
Sorry?
Is it on Skillshare, the eye demo?
No, it isn't. It's a freebie. It's on YouTube. Artie Martin. Go to YouTube and type in Artie Martin. And I think there's a year's worth of classes on there. It's about 50 classes. It's on one of their little eye tutorial. It's the same principle as when we drew the water droplet as well. If you want to draw an eyeball, is basically a water droplet, and that the light falling through an eyeball behaves in the same way as a light going through a water droplet. So go and have a look on there.
Thank you.
And yeah, it's worth a look. Okay, get your little orange eyelids in. So this is taking shape. And it's not far off being done. What do we need to look at? We need to, let's see, let's get a bit of detail in the beak. Bit of that red. Still looks, I mean, yeah, that's looking quite three-dimensional. It's, what can we do down here to have a look? I don't think that needs to be quite as white as that. So I'm just going to put in a bit more. Now I said we can always glaze over. When something's dry, we can glaze over it, and the more, the second layer of glaze you put on will darken down. So for example, there's a little bit of a shadow running down there. So if I just kind of draw that down there, that adds a little bit more glaze and a little bit more detail. And look, I can also describe a little curve or a curl. Look at the way this top lip, top bill curls under down there. Just putting a little bit more shadow in there. And you can carry on adding glazes and making things darker for as long as you like. So that's pretty much, so just sitting back and having a look at this. What would I need to do? Let's see. I want to warm this up a little bit. So again, let's take a little bit of that yellow and add it to that. It's gone green, but we know that. But we know how to deal with green. We just add a little bit of red. And look, that takes it down to a nice neutral again. Because I'm going to come back in, I'm going to put a few more little tweaks in here. So if I squint at this and I squint at that, I can see I've got a white patch there, which I'm not happy with. That's making that look a little bit too prominent. So let's kill that, take that back a bit. Let's put something like that in there. And also, I'm just thinking now, there's detail in here, but I don't want it to be solid. So I'm tempted to just put it in like this. I'm now drawing with this brush. When I say drawing, I mean I'm putting marks on like this, which is quite nice, but I'm then dabbing them off. So look, if I'm putting these marks on to give the impression of feathers like this, which looks good. Now, I'm putting these marks on and they're too heavy, they're too dark, but I can dab them off. I'm just letting them soak into the fibers of the paper a little bit, and then I just pull them back a bit with that. And it leaves a mark, but it also suggests a bit of texture, doesn't it? And now I'm starting to enjoy myself. I can start to put in some of these feathers. You know, we were talking about these longer feathers as we go down his neck. We can also, while I'm at it, just make that eyeball a bit darker. Look at that. That really makes him look at you, doesn't it? Pull them off. Put them on, pull them off. Paint on, paint off. Just the more you do this, the more confident you get about putting it on and pulling it off. And it's more confident you get about controlling your paint. I think he's about done, you know. Just maybe put a few more shadows in here. There's quite a ridge down the back of that bill, isn't there? Like that, like that. We should probably put a bit of shadow in here as well. Definitely. That's good. Can you see that's sticking out? That's going under. Could go darker under here as well. So that can go dark. I can glaze in another layer down there. I can glaze in another layer underneath like that. Now, what I haven't really done, that's a bit abrupt there. Just soften that up a bit. What I haven't really done is, you look at the end of this beak there, all it is at the moment, it's a line. And like I was saying earlier, what describes the edge of the back of his head is this kind of light, dark interface. So let's make a big old gloopy. I'm done with the shadow. So I'm going to put a background in now, but I don't want to put a flat background in. I do need a background because my background is going to tell me where the edge of this bill is and where the edges of the highlighters. So what's that blue I use? This lovely, look at that. It's a kind of a Prussian blue. It's a cool blue. It's this one here, a cool blue as opposed to a warm blue. So I'll make a big old puddle of that. And I'm going to define the edge of this head with this blue. But I'm also going to throw some other colors in there as well to make it ping. Now look, so if I go around the edge of that like that, that suddenly makes the edge of his beak more visible. And I can really start to pinpoint his profile. But like I say, I don't want it to be just blue. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to add some of that yellow just to give it a few hints of green. Let's come back in here. Now, I can also really nail the end of his beak like this. And really define what's going on. And I'm putting lots and lots of liquid down, but I'm also dropping in other colors as well. I can put a bit of red in as well. Really start to fill in and describe his profile. And here. And also, look, you can see his feathers here. These little feathers are starting to pop out. So I can suggest that, like that. Probably got a bit overboard on the colour there, but it's quite nice. Throw plenty of liquid at it. Let's go and get the back of his head done. So again, because the back of his head is bright white, I'm describing it by negative painting. That's the word I'm looking for. This is painting negative. It's painting the shape outside the subject, like this. Let's go back and let's carry this red theme and this yellow theme. Putting the yellow in gives it a nice hint of foliage. That's probably gone a little watery, a little bit pale, so I've gone in there with some stronger colour. Don't be afraid of going in with some really nice strong colour. In fact, I mean, this is nice, but I think I could go darker here. So I'm going to go straight into there, just going straight into the paint. And look, that gives you a lovely kind of dark, unctuous purple. Quite easy to get everything a bit too wishy-washy if you're not careful. So don't be afraid of going in and getting some nice dark colours going. Especially against the white. Now I'm going to go right in there and really make that contrasty. I think that's about done, you know. Yeah, spotted. I've kind of flattened out the background a bit, so with a little bit of water, I'm just going to drop in a few spots, and over the next 10 minutes, those are going to create little blooms and back runs. And that's just going to make it look a bit more organic. That's a bit messy under there. Let's just quickly tidy that up. So, as I always like to come in with my trusty water-soluble pencil, because this will give you as a really nice black mark. So if there are bits of areas of black that probably could benefit from being picked out, because we've lost his teeth somehow, so I could bring those back just with a little bit of pencil. His eyeball's nice and black already, so I'm happy with that. Nostril in there's done. Do you know what? I think we're there. I think we're there. Might just put the slightest bit of bill's a bit unfinished. Go back and come and just see underneath the bill there. You see the highlight's hitting the top of his bill, but underneath his bill, that's not highlight. That's not white. So it just needs a bit of that under there. It's the devil's in the detail. I don't want to go too close to that blue. Oops, sorry, Ron. I don't want to go too close to that bill, to the blue, because else that's going to hit each other and that's going to explode. That, look at these little spots that I put in 5 minutes ago, what they're doing, just breaking everything up. This is duck. Goose by starlight, isn't it, this? Just a bit more. I love this when this happens, when you start to get backgrounds. When things start to happen that you're not in control of. Hey, well, I reckon that's done. Let's have a look at it. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Do you like it?
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Oh, thank you. See, look at that eye. That eye looks really good, doesn't it? The way that highlight on the bottom half of his iris really makes it pop. I mean, the physics behind that is the lights coming down, hitting the eyeball, the front of the eye, creating that specular highlight, but it's also magnifying as it travels through the eye, and it's lightening up the iris underneath. And it makes the iris lighter under there than it is on top. You know, I could spend a bit more time on this eye. I could define the edge a bit more, because there's some more physics in there that tells you that that eyelid is casting a shadow on the top of that eye. But you know, you can spend hours on it. But I'm going to call that done. I'm going to call that a day. We've gone way over time today, but I've enjoyed that. I got a little bit lost in there, but that was nice. I enjoyed it. Let me just do this.
Thank you, Martin. Brilliant.
Thank you, everybody. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you. That was good.
Yeah, it was nice. It's nice to do an animal again, isn't it?
Martin.
All right.
Tomorrow.
And yeah, I see you tomorrow, Gwen, and I will see you all next week. Fingers crossed. Have a great week.
Thank you,
Keep
Martin.
sketching.
Brilliant.
All right, see you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.